On this episode of the show, I have with me Anna Patterson. She is founder at Ceramic AI, and we're going to be talking about AI leadership and specifically how it's different from other projects or companies that you would be not dealing with so much embedded and ingrained AI. We're going to be talking about why that is and why hard tasks are achievable a little bit different than some of these AI projects that companies are tackling, and specifically what Ceramic AI is tackling. Anna, thanks for taking the time to join the show.
Hi, thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Before we start, could you tell everyone what you guys do at Ceramic AI?
Yeah, Ceramic AI, started with our first launch, which is a differentiated training stack that is quite quick at training long context models. We take care for great efficiency on the GPUs. And so it's what we believe we have the most efficient training stack out there to train a large language model.
Very cool. All right. So we're going to dive into this topic about AI leadership. And, I guess let's maybe just start off at the top. If somebody does not have experience running an AI company, let alone a company, maybe just a project, I guess what are some of the just fundamental differences of if you're an engineering leader versus being an engineering leader within AI?
I guess one of the things I think about is that in an AI company, it is more similar to being a research leader than an engineering leader. So because I've been both, and for an engineering leader, you typically have a deadline and a schedule, and you have spec'd out the design of what you're going to build. Maybe you have customers that you're building it for. And I think you're fairly certain that it's going to work out. And maybe, of course, timelines might shift a bit. There can be, hiccups along the way. But I think what you're very clear on is that they're achievable goals. And when you're working in research or AI, typically you're actually kind of, reaching beyond the current state. And so you need an invention. And anytime you say, I'm going to invent something in order to make this happen, well, that means that you could not invent it, right? Or the technique that you invent could not work. And so it needs a little bit more slack, and it also needs you to treat and manage the people a little differently.
I like that. I appreciate the way you articulated that. I guess when we're looking at tackling things that haven't been done, I guess the converse, when we do, people who are traditionally, as you indicated, building something where there will be an answer. It might not be efficient, might not be elegant, but there will be an answer. I guess when you're dealing with projects, you're dealing with features, companies that you just don't know if there will be success because you still haven't proven out that you can achieve what you set out to achieve. As a leader, how do you manage just your roadmap? Because I think that would be something a lot of people go, well, what am I managing to? What's my roadmap look like if I'm not sure I know if I can deliver yet?
So I guess there's two parts of that. If I can break it down a little bit, I guess one is, what do you want to achieve? And for a lot of these AI companies, what they want to achieve involves inventing something that hasn't been done yet. And so it's pushing the frontier. And so that's part of something that might not be achievable. But the other part is what every company or every startup might face is what they're building going to actually resonate with the market. So you kind of have two problems for an AI company. You're trying usually for something difficult. And at the same time, you have to ask yourself, even if I did invent this thing, so what? Would anybody care? Does anyone need this? So I think that needs a lot of introspection. And I think, managing through all that uncertainty is definitely interesting. And I'm sure there can be as many philosophies on this as there are managers of AI startups.
Absolutely. I love the way you put that. I guess maybe a third component that I was thinking about and I was hoping to get your opinion on. We've seen in the last 36 months, obviously, a lot of attention, a lot of development. We've also seen that the pace of change with the larger players, they could easily release a feature that could just wipe out a bunch of people that thought, hey, we're potentially on the path of releasing something interesting within the space. I guess, how do you deal with the pace of change, not only from your internal component, but the external players? And a lot of times the startup market, you don't have all these gigantic companies competing with you. A lot of times it's a small market, no one's in it, we're kind of building.
You kind of have to ask yourself when you're looking at your roadmap, like we're bringing out very interesting things soon. But when you look at the roadmap, I think you have to ask yourself kind of what is your team or what are you, uniquely qualified to do, and how does that, play in the market? And, I think that there has been a lot of talk about, vertical AI as one solution to what you're talking about, that, OpenAI and Anthropic and the large frontier models, they're going to make techniques to make the overall model better. And sure, maybe 1 month they'll work on competition math, or they'll work on, some other hard frontier problem. But, going deep in a vertical is one idea that a lot of people have floated to try to future-proof their innovations.
I actually think, the idea of, I guess, some of that depth, the data, better understanding, I guess that does make sense. When you're looking at your roadmap, when you're working with your team, does the team that joins an AI company, you can use your own or just talk generally about it, do they kind of come into with an understanding that, I don't want to use the word pivoting, but things happen quickly? Is that going to be expected?
Yeah, I think actually the people that join a startup, we try to do a lot of prep while we're interviewing and before people start, practically trying to talk them out of it. Like, or, not if they've come from another startup, but if they're coming from a big company, like, are you sure this is what it's like? It might feel haphazard to you. You might have more than one direction you're going in. Is that fun? Is it not fun? How are you feeling? And generally, so far, we've gotten it right. After the first few weeks, we ask people, are they having fun? What do they think of the chaos of startup and AI startup? And they mostly say, oh my God, this is exactly what I was looking for. It's like, textbook startup. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, you did allude to the fact that there are different ways of building AI companies. I guess when we're seeing this space play out, we're seeing a lot of people looking for similar capabilities in terms of doing some of this invention, right? It's not just somebody who has software engineering skills. It's a little bit different, especially if you're a part of the core, you're building models, training models that are going to be building these platforms. When it comes to you and what you're seing, how do you compete with those, Anthropics, the open AIs? Because a lot of times talent will be overlapping. How do you see that work out?
I mean, right now we absolutely can't and don't. I mean, the talent that is going to OpenAI, Anthropic, the amounts that the big companies are paying for a top researcher. So sometimes we are taking bets on people whose research we know, where we have a pipeline that we know they're thinking about publishing. We like what they're thinking, but they're not as established a researcher to maybe garner the attention of the bigger labs. So we're taking a bet on some young talent there. And sometimes we're taking a bet on people who have the right background, but maybe right after their PhD, they worked in an area that is adjacent to large language models instead of in it. And, they're smart, they're handy, they have all the right background, but not the perfect recent experience. So those are the kind of people that we're able to pick up, and we find them, useful within a few weeks. So that's what you have to do when you're a startup.
Yep, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. I guess kind of focusing a little bit on the space itself, AI infrastructure. We hear a lot about the products themselves, and as for consumers, for people who are not actually building the infrastructure, the platforms, the foundational models, where does the AI infrastructure sit within just development of that as a segment unto itself?
There's a continuum. I think at the beginning, everything's invisible to the consumer. So in the beginning, you have data prep and some data prep startups, or big labs are probably doing data prep themselves. And then you have pre-training if you can train a model from scratch, or maybe you're ingesting a lot of data of a corporation, which is somewhere in between pre-training and post-training. It's kind of like a large amount of data ingestions towards the end of training a model. And then there's a whole area of post-training, which I think, both OpenAI and DeepSeek brought to the fore when they were talking about reasoning models. How you're turning a base model into a reasoning model is an area of post-training. And that's an area that's going to become more and more important. It's also not quite as expensive as pre-training from scratch, where you can make a model that's good generally, be more pointy, be more good at like one workflow or one area. And then you have inference. And so there's a number of inference startups. And of course, the big models have to serve. Right now, they're serving their own models. I mean, maybe they're partnering with an inference startup behind the scenes. I don't know. But that's kind of the whole layers. I'm sure I've missed people. I'm really sorry. Before a user maybe types a query into a box and gets an answer.
So you were Google. You worked with the search engine product?
Yes.
When you look at the search engine space, obviously what ends up in the consumer's laps is slightly different. We all tend to gravitate we've all centered on Google. It's been the dominant player. When you're looking at AI, you alluded to different models of AI that's on the market, the vertical. Maybe we'll see some different models come out. Do you have a sense as, I guess, can you use some of the experience of seeing the search engine, battles play out to see if you're putting your future?
When Excite was big, I remember
that.
Big to me, Alta Vista, so I kind of remember there were search engine wars before there was even a Google, right? Because it was all of those players kind of fighting for market share. And it was fun. And you would try different queries in different places. I remember Excite was the first people who brought up like pictures. So of course, a big query back in the day, let's say it was Britney Spears. So you would do a Britney Spears query and it would have a picture of her and some bio details. And that's kind of what you see now in the top of Google. Whereas Alta Vista was, 10 links, kept it more academic, more plain, at faster serve time. And so I think, you've seen an evolution of Google search from a more Alta Vista kind of format to actually a little bit more of an Excite format. So I think it's interesting the way things have played out.
How do you see AI? And obviously, no one's going to hold you to this, but I'm curious because it seems with the impact we're looking at, it's multiples of anything we've seen if we're going to talk about the impact. But how does this look in your view of what plays out? Is it a case of different models? Somebody labeled it little language models that are going to come up and do really well versus the large language models. Is it a case of we're going to have niches of models? What do you think kind of happens in the future if you were putting your
I think the near future is going to be as messy as it can be, right? So the frontier models will continue pushing the frontier. I think that some people will use distillation techniques in order to take some of the knowledge from the big models and teach the smaller models. And you'll have, like, pointy models that are good at one thing or good in a workflow inside one corporation. So I think that the near future is quite a bit of a mess, like a starting line of a marathon. It's a lot of people running, and then maybe the finish line looks a little bit neater because people are kind of finishing one by one. So I really see us, at the beginning.
Going back to leadership, and obviously, as we kind of talked about, dealing with some of the things that you have to invent, create. When it comes to being a leader and managing your team's, I guess, emotionality, their enthusiasm, staying focused in terms of, hey, we have had setbacks, but we're still going down the right path. How do you make sure they stay focused and engaged?
Actually, I don't make sure they stay focused. Hopefully, they're professional enough to want to stay focused. I think that's one thing about researchers is one thing that is interesting about getting a PhD that is often overlooked is there's like a deep, deep self-motivation. No, nobody is dying for you to graduate. It's not like a 4-year program and then you get a degree. You have to have deep self-motivation. Otherwise, it's never happening. And that also has like a deep level of curiosity. So I think everybody we have has gone to grad school. If not have a PhD, I think we have one master's. But yeah, I think that gives a lot of self-motivation. And also it's a motivating time and a motivating space. So I try to make sure people are having fun. I know that's seems to be an anathema, but because it's long and because we're near the beginning, I think the thing that we can do is listen to people's ideas, not have everything be top down, be collaborative. And we do a lot of things for people's energy. I mean, we did silly hitting of pinatas yesterday in the office. So it's just, things that that we're doing to help people, be happy. And secondly, I think that this is a very hard intellectual space. So it needs a lot of deep thinking. And I think deep thinking and 14-hour day works don't go really well together. So I kind of joke around that people should pretend that they're supermodels and get a good night's sleep because that's what their brain needs. So yeah.
I like that. I guess you yourself, it's a startup. Are you still hands-on? Are you still pretty involved in code, or too far away?
No, I mean, I was coding a lot. And then I think, for our launch, I had to pause for a moment. I found out that I can't code and talk to external people too effectively. I would maybe, let's say I coded right till I talked to you, there would be a moment that it would be dead silent where I'd be like, and you're like, what's up with Anna? She's being spazzy. And I'd have to write down something like, okay, I just realized what's wrong. Yeah. So yeah, but I'll be back to it. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess maybe final question. I mean, you have PhD. You're surrounded by researchers. You must like that aspect of the job. Sounds like you're tackling challenges. As the company gets bigger and you kind of grow, you guys, and you've been at different startups. You've been at Google. How do you kind of envision your role evolving and changing? Or do you see yourself as staying close to that technology side, running the business more or less? What do you kind of envision for yourself?
I am going to be serendipitous about who we hire and who's the best player for the job. I do want to create like a synergistic team. There are things I'm good at, there are things other people are good at, and I want us to, work together as a team and honor what's good about each other. But I'm easygoing either way.
Well, I appreciate your time. If somebody does want to reach out to Anna to ask you something about the company, something about just AI leadership in general, is there a good way of reaching out and connecting with you?
Yeah, Anna at Ceramic AI gets to me.
We'll make sure to get that out there. Again, thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. That's it for this episode. Be back again, different guest, different topic. Until then, I think we talked about AI leadership. We talked about some search history and kind of what we have seen transpire and how that might affect the rest of the market. I guess we can't hold anyone to those future views, but it's always interesting. We talked a little bit about AI infrastructure and how that's important. So please share this episode with somebody else who might benefit from it as well. Also, like, subscribe, comment. Let me know how the show is going for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.